You're watching and listening to the Real Anime Podcast. My name is Monish, and as always, I'm here with my friendly co host, Lewis, who is slightly under the weather today, but don't let that fool you. He is still better than Steven Gerrard on a rainy day at Stoke. So now let's get into the anime we're talking about. So today we're talking about jazz, we're talking about giants, and we're talking about jam. Because I was on the federal highway today and it was jam like nobody's business. But that is what it's like living in the city and all this and that. Um, if you haven't guessed it by now, we are talking about Blue Giant. And if you don't know, Blue Giant is an anime that follows a high school student named Dai. He gets interested in jazz and he feels passionate about it, and he moves from his small town to Tokyo to start pursuing jazz full time. And he gets roped into this trio with other jazz players and an amateur drummer who they all go on a legendary run basically. And it's that kind of story. And what is amazing to me personally is, firstly, the film has become a bit of a cult thing in anime, and it is very much a beautifully animated film. Let's put that out there. It's the kind of film that's just got a beautiful, crisp um, animation to it. But I also do believe that this film really deserves its flowers. It's an intense watch. It's over 2 hours long as well, which for anime films is quite the watch. But I'm going to pass this over to my co host Lewis, who's going to talk about his impressions, his first impressions of Blue Giant. So, Lewis, over to you.
I thoroughly love the film itself. Jazz in any film or any anime film is quite rare. The last time heard of jazz in any anime or what TV or film was Cowboy Bebop. Arguably, the best anime out there for TV shows, I would say, in my opinion, or one of the best. I thoroughly enjoyed the music for the film. It fit the story itself very nicely. And also, just the music itself just did the talking and just kind of set the tone for the film, I would say. But yeah.
It did. And I think also the really interesting thing about Blue Giant is that Blue Giant has one of those things where it's basically like, oh, we're watching a jazz anime that could easily be a series that goes on for 2, 3 seasons. But I think there's a finality in this film as well. But I'm going to talk about the limited release that has had a lot of fans, given a lot of fans some difficulty finding this film. So, for those of you who don't know, Blue Giant will be on Netflix coming up soon in, I believe, a few weeks' time. And it will be available in the US and Canada, as far as we know, which is still a very limited release. It had a limited run in Japan itself, and an even more limited theatrical release. So if you weren't actively tracking this anime, it'd be very easy to miss. But the internet, being the internet, has brought this back to life, and it for the first and foremost, I have to say, it's not a mainstream anime. It's not directed by Makoto Shinkai. It's not some shonen or shoujo anime that's going to have a huge fan base. It does have a manga, and it's not some franchise sequel or history epic. It is on its own a film that is about jazz, and there's no backstory unless you read the anime. There's only that this 2 hours of film that is really just, you can tell the budget must be crushing for this film because it is really well animated, even to the point you feel the exhaustion from the characters when you see them perform, when you see them play their jazz sets, and it just feels really amazing. But this film to me is really interesting because it has a small audience and it's really spreading by the word of mouth, which is interesting in this day and age. So it has very like niche appeal to this audience, but I feel like more and more of the anime community are pushing it to more mainstream audiences. So hopefully we get a worldwide distribution for Blue Giant. And they already have a streaming deal, but I hope that streaming deal becomes worldwide because honestly, there just needs to be more on this film that is needs to be talked about more, basically. But Lewis, let's get into the film itself. We will let you all know right now that this will be a slightly spoilery episode, but we will do our best to keep the spoilers out of it. So, Lewis, talk to me first and foremost about jazz in anime. Yes or no?
I would say, yeah, well, jazz and anime. You can say you can see these two good examples in Cowboy Bebop and also Blue Giant, where where jazz is really like the talking point of these two respective shows and films. Now, jazz itself, I would say that it's kind of, when you listen to it, it has like a nice soul, nice groove to it. If you're a musician, you already know you're playing out of beat. But to a normal average Joe who listens to jazz more or less every day or whatnot, you start to think that, hey, this actually sounds nice. It's just like throwing all the rule book out the window. And I would say that jazz has that one thing that kind of really excels in the genre itself is the instruments that is used, like the saxophone itself. The saxophone itself, you must be able to have a lung capacity of a vape smoker whose smokes looks like a Galatasaray stadium afterwards to really be able to play the saxophone, if you get what I mean, right? But I mean, and not only that, to play the saxophone, it's not easy to play because it requires, let's just say, 90% of blowing power of your lungs, being able to like blow out everything into this and just try to create like a nice beat to it is just also something which is not easy, let's just say. And to answer your question, jazz for anime, jazz for anime, jazz in anime films or shows. Yeah, why not? We should see more of it, I guess. Maybe, or maybe my next short film I could do more jazzy stuff. Who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean, we'd all love to see that. I think jazz in anime has always been such a niche thing. I feel I too, like Lewis, only know about jazz in anime through Cowboy Bebop. Then of course you have the advent of like how big that became and how that soundtrack, the Cowboy Bebop intro, has become one of the most iconic worldwide. And you see all these things, and it's just like, oh, should jazz be in film or sorry, in anime a lot more? But I think maybe because it's such an intimidating genre of music that it feels difficult to introduce into the films and into anime in general because unless it's like that kind of elevator jazz where it's not just melodic but it's in the background. I think anime still does use that, but I don't think they use the kind of jazz that have musicians competing against one another. It's not melodic, it's very much competitive, it's very much, blowing each other's horns, if you will. And it does feel very much like a competition every time the characters play jazz in Blue Giant because that level of commitment to jazz and understanding that the soundtrack has got to be jazz because of the fact that this movie is a jazz movie, it feels very much like a challenge to ensure that the film's pacing does not get interrupted by the way the rhythm of the music is done. So unless you're cutting it like jazz, which I will say this film is not cut like jazz, it tends to be such a jarring change of pace and jarring change of tone for a film. So I'm very impressed that by the way Blue Giant was able to bring all of these elements together and really feel like in an experience. But I think that's the key word, right? Experience. So, Lewis, I'm gonna just pop this question out here for you because we've seen the film, right? So, did Blue Giant feel like an anime film experience to you, or did it feel like a concert experience at times? Because I say this because the performances in the film where they're playing jazz are not short. They play the entire song. So do you think, Louis, that some moments or some moments in this film felt like a concert experience instead of a film experience. So talk more about that if you could.
It feels like a concert experience, I would say. Reason being, because sometimes when I just close my eyes and just let the music play, I really think that it's a concert feeling, you know. When I'm looking at the film itself, I see all these flashing lights, flashing lights, flashing lights, you know, and then I just close my eyes for a moment and I feel like I am at a jazz concert, really. That's how the music is written in a way where I just feel like closing your eyes, letting the music do the talking, it kind of makes you visual. I guess if you're Stevie Wonders, you can watch this film, you know, or listen to this film. And
I mean, like I agree with. I just add on to what Lewis is saying. Actually, like I want to emphasize that when they perform the songs, right, they're not just playing 1 minute of the song. You know, they are playing the full song in its entirety. So you just get nothing but jazz for 5 minutes sometimes. But yes, back to you, Lewis.
yeah, I was just gonna say like if you take like towards the ending bit of the film itself, no spoilers, just a heads up. It, that full of 5 minutes plus minus itself just felt like a proper concert experience. I know in film that you should not close your eyes and you know and listen to the
I
film.
mean, all I'm gonna say is if that's the way you enjoyed it, no problem. But I will say that the animation must have cost a bomb lah.
I try my best. I try my best to watch it, but it was a bit, oof, not to say jarring,
Stressful.
but there were a lot of things happening at the moment. You know.
Yeah, yeah. If I could just expound on that as well, I agree with Lewis 100% because there are moments in this film where the performance gets intense, and I think this is totally something the filmmakers intended, but the film gets really jarring in the sense that it becomes like such an you're it's like you're trapped in a room with this film in some ways because the performance never stops. After Dai is done with his bit, the drums kick in and the piano goes off, and then he back to the trumpets again, sorry, the saxophone, and it becomes like this really jarring experience of competition on stage when they're meant to be performing to a crowd. But of course, that's the jazz psychology, right? But I love the way Lewis put it in the sense like he closed his eyes because to be honest at some point this becomes an auditory experience. But Louis, I think the main thing is this okay for you or not?
I mean, like yeah, obviously watching a film, you wanna watch it for the visuals and the storyline itself. But I guess certain moments like this, sometimes it's always good to use your imagination. You know, let the music play out. And, you know, or maybe you could just watch it for the first time, close your eyes, watch it a second time, watch the visuals. It's just like a music video. People don't want to watch a music video, maybe because there's too much of this and that. Or sometimes people want to watch the audio. Watch the audio, listen to the audio, sorry.
Okay, so I want to make something clear. Like I want to say first and foremost, even though we are talking about how much music there is in this film, we both, I'm sure, do not believe that this film is a music video. It very much is a film. It has its story, it has its moments of drama and conflict. It's just that when it commits to its musical moments, it just jumps. There's just no, half. It's not half-assed lah. So if you're a jazz fan, you're gonna love it. If you're not, you're gonna love it. You're gonna get into the intensity of jazz, which I believe is the best part, right? But moving into like a more deeper angle, so we can get deeper and deeper and deeper into this topic. Luis, you're obviously not a jazz musician, but do you care about, or did this film allow you to appreciate jazz more as music, not just as part of the soundtrack of a film, but did this film allow you to appreciate jazz more? Because, for example, you talked about a bit about Cowboy Bebop. I think a lot of people love Cowboy Bebop's rendition of jazz, how it's made that intro, the para 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 para. But uh, I think my specific question is, do you appreciate jazz as a musical form more because you've watched Blue Giant, you've seen Cowboy Bebop, that kind of thing?
I've always appreciated jazz as a genre. I've actually tried to play jazz myself on the guitar, and it's more or less trying to get the groove of things. Just finding the groove and then being able to just play off of your feelings. Jazz is a genre where itself is all about feelings, not technical. Okay, a bit of technicality, but it's just more or less about going with your gut instinct instead of like the knowledge that you gain through music itself, right? But all I can say is with jazz itself, I think I've written a few jazz scores back in the day, right? And all I can say is I've always appreciated jazz as a genre. I honestly think that it's better than K-pop and rap, to be honest with you. Because why jazz has more of the soul in it. They put all of everything into their songs, and then it's like a joy to watch and listen. So it's like a joy to listen when you want to listen to jazz itself. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate jazz as a genre. You have so many great jazz songs out there. I can't really think of it because I'm a bit sick. I can't think of anyone on the top of my head. But if you ask Monish, he'll be able to name you some good jazz legends there. Probably. He's a man cultured in this genre. All right, you should check out his Spotify too. And all I can say is jazz as a genre, I tend to appreciate it, especially if I want to improve as a musician.
Okay, well, that's the first time someone has ever promoted my Spotify personally, so that's awesome, I guess. It feels like a very big moment for me. No, I'm kidding. But at the same time, it's I mean, there are a lot of the classics. You got Louis Armstrong, you got Billie Holiday, you got, of course, John Coltrane. Miles Davis. Louis Armstrong or whatever. But like, I do believe Japan as a country has been super appreciative of jazz as a genre of music. Jazz clubs are not uncommon there. And then, of course, you've got jazz clubs all over the world now, and there's all these kinds of things. Famous authors like Haruki Murakami, they love jazz too. So there's all these influences on Japanese society that jazz has. So I feel like, in general, jazz just always has the not to say upper hand, but I think it's easily digestible for a Japanese audience, and I believe for across the world, I do hope Blue Giant resonates because that kind of film is pretty rare. The way it's made, yeah. But I want to talk more now about music as storytelling. Um, I do believe, like we did say, it's not a music video. This is very much still a film. But how did the animation feel to you, Louis? Like you did talk about it a little bit, but let's expand on that. How did the animation style feel to you? It's not really Makoto Shinkai. I've seen some people comment that it's kind of Makoto Shinkai, but I don't think so. I think it's not quite Makoto Shinkai's style. I do believe there is a good mix of hand-drawn animation, 3D animation, and VFX. So it's like you can kind of tell once things become 3D when he starts moving forward and the camera goes to the side angle. But I think for like the main question I want to ask is, how was the animation for you? Was it good? Was it bad? Do you like it? Is it good? Does it work for the story?
I was just gonna say it was almost like Makoto Shinkai, almost, but wasn't that? Is
It's
it
not
better?
quite Makoto Shinkai, but it's definitely trying to be.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I'll reference a couple of minutes that I liked of the film itself. Around about minute 25. I mean, if you guys are listening to this or watching this, in the edits you see like around about minute 25. There's the shot of these two bridges itself where it's like a nice wide shot you get to see. And also in 10 minute and 56 seconds, these two shots are like the 10-minute 56 shots. It's like a nice top down view of Tokyo itself. And I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed that shot. And in terms of visual aspect itself, Makoto Shinkai is still number one. He's kind of the one who sets the tone for everything. But this film itself, in terms of visual standpoint alone, I would say is very, very, very close to Makoto Shinkai. Comparable, that's a story for another day. But I like the visuals itself, bit of hand drawn itself, it's just reference to like Giant Killing where, you have like all the pencil lines on the characters' faces also. I see a bit of like the pencil lines on these character faces also, like for Yuki or, Die, or maybe like who else is there? Uh, Tomada or something. Like the character design itself is like one of the things which I like.
Yeah, I mean, character design for a film, especially like this one, is very, very important because it's like, how can you look at it and not feel it? But then at the same time, I do feel they did use a tad too much uh, 3D animation for my liking. In my opinion, it's just my personal preference here. But Hiromi Uehara. That's right. See, get the name right. He's the composer for this film, and I think he deserves a lot more praise than expected because he really knocked it out of the park with everything that he's been doing. You know, another thing I feel like, do you think that this film should inspire more anime filmmakers or anime animators to explore subjects in this way? You know, like, I guarantee you, if you show this to a 8-year-old boy now or an 8-year-old girl, he or she may feel like, hey, I may want to try jazz. You know, I feel inspired. You know, I do you think, and I think anime, especially when we were growing up, tackled these problems in a very, very similar way. I feel like we need more films like this in the anime convention because obviously we have Makoto Shinkai who's got the romance thing down pat, and you know you've got other more uh how do I put it, more commercially viable anime directors coming out. But I do feel that stories like Blue Giant should be things we allow to really have be that wild card in the anime universe, or like in the anime spot lah. In the like what do you think about this kind of film, Louis?
I mean, this type of film is certainly a good way to help promote these sort of topics. You could say jazz itself, Makoto Shinkai with his romance and all. Another film would probably be like Silent Voice, where it tackles bullying also as a topic. Also, that's a throwback right there. So in a way, I think these types of films will really really inspire like the younger generations to like be free with like all these sort of topics or genres or whatever they want to talk about in the film itself. I think this film is a good way to pave the way for that because I think we need to have more films with a bit more variety instead of the same old story, the same old genre and all. And this is a good way to help like break out of the, not to say the stereotypes, but the normal conventional way. Okay, and apologies if you guys are looking at me uh like wiping my nose or whatnot. I have a bit of a nose block, so apologies for that. But just for you guys, I stay dedicated.
I mean, he's sick, but he soldiers on. You know, that's
Yeah.
that's that's what we do here at the Real Anime Podcast. You know, but I think we've really explored it as much as we can already at this point without spoiling it. So I will say that Blue Giant is a film you all should definitely check out when you get the opportunity. As I said, it will be on Netflix in a few weeks in the US and Canada, and hopefully there will be a much more expedient release in Asia for it. Hopefully, I can't believe it's not gotten a wide release in Japan and Korea, but there you go. Money talks, I suppose. So I really do hope that you guys check out Blue Giant. And as always, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Louis, for soldiering on even though you're sick. And you know, this is what we love doing. This is what we're doing. And Louis has a film coming out soon, so do keep your eyes peeled for that. And thank you all, and we will see you in the next episode where we will possibly be discussing one of the most impactful films that has come out recently, which does have something to do with YouTube, uh, a lung and an iron. Yes. Okay. In that case, take care, and we will see you in the next one.